Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist. I have degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, and a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy. In this video, I'm not seeking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. It's a holiday weekend. Yay. Some people get a long weekend, which is great. So the title of the show is about men loving women changing their DNA. So the beginning part is about changing for somebody you love. So we're going to talk a little bit about attachment styles. And then I'm going to talk about something called Microchimera, which is it's an interesting theory. And I really went down a rabbit hole. In fact, because I have to keep all my notes here. Because I'm like this, I had to print out all the research to go through it, to read it, to try to figure it out what they were saying. And woof, it was quite the rabbit hole with no definitive answer. Spoiler alert. Hi, Nina. Thanks for coming in. Hi, Adric. Thanks for being here. Okay, so we're going to, and hi, Adrian. I know you can't say hello, but I know you're listening. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is attachment styles. And I think it's important to know because this is one of those things that makes its rounds and becomes a little more popular, becomes a little more trendy. So because people use psychology and mental health and relationship theory in inappropriate ways sometimes, usually to beat other people over the head with it, I want to talk about it. So mostly what I'm hearing on social media is talking about avoidant attachment styles. Hi, Toya. Thanks for being here. So we're going to talk about what is the actual theory and what do those mean, and how people do morph their attachment styles around the person they're in a relationship with. So we'll talk about that, and then we're going to get into the microchimera. Also, when we're talking about attachment theory, I am going to show a video. I am rating this live not appropriate for children because of the video I'm going to show. If you have sensitive feelings, it might be good. I'll give you another warning before I start it, but it might be good not to watch that part and then click back in after about, I think the video is 6 minutes or so. So give it about 7 minutes and then click back in. Hi, D. Scott. Thanks for being here. Hi, Leon. You learned this first in lifespan. I don't know what lifespan is. I'd be interested to know what lifespan is. Okay, so attachment theory was made by John Bowlby. And then it was added to by other psychoanalysts. Mary Ainsworth partnered up with him. Erik Erikson came in on it. And then Erik Erikson made these stages of development that people had to go through. So all of this is kind of part of developmental psychology. And so what the theory is based on is that babies or young children who have a disruption in their caregiving, then they react in 4 different ways when they're reunited with their primary caregiver. So I have notes in front of me again. I want to be sure I stay on track because I get off track, get off on tangents. So we have secure attachment, which is where like they see their parent, they go to their parent, they seek their parent out for reassurance and comfort and those kind of things. And then there's anxious resistant, which is they seek comfort, but then they kind of push back on their parents, which can be a little confusing. There's avoidant, which is where they don't show any stress during the separation and they ignore their caregivers when they come back. And then disorganized, meaning there's no predictable pattern to see how the child's going to react over multiple times. So someone named Harry Harlow, who was also studying attachment, did some experiments with some little monkeys, sweet little monkeys. So I want to show you guys the video of him doing this experiment on attachment and kind of watching in real time how the monkeys respond to different things as far as attachment is concerned. So hold on. Lifespan development is a basic course for students before they get a science degree in Texas. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, so anybody who's kind of sensitive, the monkeys do cry. So that's what I'm telling you. If you feel like you might have a bad reaction to that, then click off for about 6-7 minutes. But I think it's important to see it in action to see how that plays out with the babies. So I'm going to bring it up. Have to find it, you know what I mean? Okay.
Let me show you a monkey raised on a nursing wire mother. Now here are 106's two mothers. As you can see, it was weaned on a wire mother. Here's baby 106. Watch.
He's going to the wire mother.
He's got to eat to live.
Oh, he's going back.
He's back on the cloth mother, and he'll stay on the cloth mother. Actually, this baby spends from 17 to 18 hours a day on the cloth mother, and less than 1 hour a day on the wire mother. We had predicted that the variable of contact comfort would be a variable of measurable importance, but we were unprepared to find that it completely overwhelmed and overshadowed all other variables, including those of nursing.
Frankly, Doctor, if it comes to a choice between wire and cloth, it's reasonable to expect that any child will go to the cloth. It's a matter of creature comfort, like a baby with its blanket. But is this really love?
Well, what do you mean by saying that a baby loves its mother? Certainly one thing we mean is that it gets a great feeling of security in the presence of the mother. Now, Mr. Collingwood, wouldn't you say that if you frightened a baby, that it went running to its mother, was comforted, and then all the fear disappeared and was replaced by a complete sense of security, that baby loved its mother? Now, in this experiment, this is the apparatus we use.
That looks diabolical.
That's just the way the baby monkey feels about it. Flashing eyes, loud sound, moving mechanical parts, all of these things are designed to frighten a monkey. Now here we have a peaceful, resting baby monkey. Let's find out what his reactions to his mother are when we frighten him.
He's scared, all right.
And he does what any child will do in a similar situation.
He runs away.
It's more than running away. He was running to his mother to touch her to drive away his fear. Contact with the mother changes his entire personality. Look, now he's actually threatening the diabolical object. All right. This gives us part of the picture of the strength of infantile love. This is a 6-foot square room with a few toys and other objects. But to the monkey, it's much more menacing. We know that when our own children are taken to a strange place without their mothers, they are often overwhelmed with fear. This room is just such a new and strange environment for the baby monkeys. No mother is in there. Now, let's put a monkey into the room. Notice how cautiously he enters the room. He's searching for comfort, but nothing relieves his disturbance. Now we'll take the baby monkey out and put in a wire mother.
Now, this one was nursed by a wire mother.
That's right, all his life.
She doesn't seem to help much.
Now we'll try the same test with a cloth mother in the room. You see the contrast in the behavior? Despite the fact that the wire mother nursed him, she could offer this infant nothing in the way of affection or security. But here the monkey, by rubbing against the cloth mother, as if he were seeking as much contact comfort as he could get, builds up his reservoir of affection and security. First, his body relaxes as the fear disappears. But above and beyond this, new positive response patterns appear. He now goes out to explore and investigate this new, strange world. He is now a normal, happy, curious baby.
Okay, so I agree with Leon. Um, we're going to do other things. Apparently, that sound's going to come up. Okay, so I agree with Leon that I hate that. And obviously, that experiment was old. And they've changed things since then, ethics and procedures. So they can be hard to watch. So welcome back to anybody who had to click out. It can be hard to watch. But this kind of shows the type of experimentation that was going on when people were coming up with these theories about attachment. And then when they were talking about attachment and how it applies over the lifetime. So if we think about, just living in the world that we live in and, the fact that most people nowadays have grown up with both parents having to work, not having a primary attachment. Hi, Ella. And, all that come with that, having to be in different places, going to latchkey or having to go to daycare or having a babysitter or home by yourself. There's a lot of those things that can affect the way that we attach later. So the 4 adult attachment styles that come out from attachment development. Leon, you can add stuff. You've watched all of them. I'm sure you have good information. So we have secure. which, it's a satisfied attachment, right? You seek things and you get things, you feel connected. The attachment is honest, supportive, and people have their own independence, and then they have their inner connectedness. It's deeply emotional. The second one is dismissive or anxious attachment. So, like, if you hear about it on social media, you might hear about anxious attachment too. Anxious attachment is kind of distant. Um, they don't feel like they need a connection. They kind of insist on maintaining independence. Um, they may shut down when they get emotionally overwhelmed, and and anxiety is kind of what surrounds their connections. And then there's preoccupied or resistant, um, which these people, it's interesting. It's kind of like the kid who sought comfort but then pushed the parents away. So, like, these people are desperate for love. They want love. They want the connection, but they tend to get something that's called limerence, which is like where you're romanticizing the idea of love rather than the actuality of a relationship, right? So if you're if you're idealizing a person thinking that they're going to save you, they're going to fix your life, they're going to hug all your trauma back together, they're, whatever it is, that the live happily ever after kind of thing, then you're setting yourself and the other person up for disappointment, right? Because nobody's perfect. These are human beings, right? So um, they can tend to be clingy, demanding, easily get jealous, um, sort of like always finding the issue, the problem, because it's supposed to be this like fairy tale romantic story. And then there's fearful avoidant, which is also called disorganized. So, in disorganized or fearful avoidant, or sometimes on social media, you'll hear avoidant. Um, People tend to be pretty ambivalent when it comes to connection and relationship, like, don't care. They tend to try to avoid feelings or avoid feeling like they may be vulnerable in some way in a relationship. They can have some pretty abrupt mood swings. It's hard for people who avoid it to stay consistent, um, because much like the anxious attachment, it's like they always know their exit strategy, right? Like, nobody's going to hurt me. I always know the exit strategy. So I can stay in ambivalence or I'm out, be that, starting a fight or those kind of things. Because really what they're avoiding is getting hurt. They're not necessarily avoiding a relationship or loving someone. They're avoiding being hurt like they had been, right? So they tend to be non-committal. Okay. So if somebody has concerns about their attachment, let me back up a second. I don't know in this day and age how many people get all the way through their development into their adulthood and have 100% secure attachment style. I just I don't know how common that is. And I haven't looked at any studies on it. I don't know if anybody studied it. I think it would be difficult to study, but it seems like in this day and age, and we hear a lot of people say everybody's been through something, and I agree with that. Everybody's been through something, some people a lot worse than others. So you can have, say, an anxious attachment style and know it, know that you kind of get like that. And so you figure out ways to deal with it, right? Or you have the preoccupied attachment style where you get into limerence and you're romanticizing love. You're in love with love instead of the relationship. So that, and you take steps. Or avoidant, that you take steps. So if you have concerns, this is one of those things you can learn from other people, right? I want to see what Leon says. They tend to like the highlight reel of the ideals of love, a wedding, the pictures, experience of vacation, the feeling or experience of the sex. They don't put in the work. Yeah, it's kind of like they're most susceptible to the social media version of relationships and families, right? Like I'll hear sometimes the person wants to get married. No, they want to have the wedding. They don't want to be married. Or like they want to have the wedding. They don't want to be a wife. Or they want to have the wedding and don't want to be a husband, however that, goes. That plays into that a lot, that it's almost like you're pinning everything about your own health, safety, security, whatever on somebody else. Like it becomes somebody else's responsibility to save you and make you whole instead of going into the relationship as a whole human being. Okay, Leon also says, yeah, capitalism mixed with Maslow's hierarchy needs will result in most people not having that attachment style. Yeah, I mean, I would think, educated guess, that it's probably pretty rare in the general population, right? Hi, Artisan MC. Thanks for being in here. So this is something we can learn about from others. Yes, this attachment style happens during a period of time when things generally get set, but we can learn other things, right? Like as human beings, we seek role models because we learn through other people. We can learn a lot of things vicariously, kind of like you see somebody put their hand on something and they burn, not to put your hand on that. So we learn in that way. We learn from role models. So this is something that if you can find role models who have a pretty secure attachment with each other, have a pretty healthy attachment with each other, you can kind of watch them, learn from them, like looking at their emotional closeness, the calmness and stability in their relationship, how they voice their needs. They value their relationship over the fear that comes into play in relationships, right? Because I mean, everybody knows giving your heart to somebody, there is fear there, right? It just intrinsically, because you put yourself in a vulnerable position, right? Now, this person has some responsibility towards their relationship, right? And you have to sort of hope that they're not going to use it against you, right? So there's some fear there, but in a secure attachment, that they place the relationship over the individuals. That makes sense. A big thing with attachment styles is you can see through the anxious attachment that anxious, avoidant, the preoccupied, dismissive, those you will see intrinsically in that is some insecurity. I was going to say self-esteem, but it's not really that. It's insecurity. So doing things that can make you feel more secure in your own skin, like with yourself, like letting go of worry and fear where relationships are concerned, like what's going to happen is going to happen. One of my favorite phrases is, it is what it is. That's called radical acceptance, meaning that just I'm accepting all of it. It is what it is. And we just go with it, right? Understanding that rejection's part of life. I don't think any of us are going to get out of life without being rejected at some point in time. It's part of it. It's part of that human experience. And we learn a lot of things, and we learn about ourselves when we've been rejected. Find ways that reassure yourself rather than seeking it from other people, right? Like sometimes that's okay, especially if you're in a relationship. Like, hey, I need a little reassurance, you can ask for that, but being able to provide that to yourself too is pretty important. But just at the end of the day, accept yourself as you are. We don't have to overinflate ourselves, but we also don't have to undervalue ourselves, right? We all have quirks or weird things or things, mistakes we've made in the past, skeletons in the closet, whatever it is, right? We all have stuff because we're human beings. And that's kind of, there's beauty in that, each human being, right? So just accept yourself as you are and kind of at the same time commit to doing better, right? Then that kind of takes that insecurity in a different direction. Okay. So I wanted to get into the microchimera because that was so interesting. I'm going to pull up this study to get the screens just right. This one. Okay. So, oh no, I need to scroll to the top. So, what the study is about, what they're talking about, what that big stack of studies that I showed you guys that I went through, whew, it was a lot. But what they're looking at is they found male DNA. I'm going to change this because I want to see you guys. Okay. Nope. I got to make it bigger than that. Okay, better. Okay. They found male DNA in the brains, like during autopsy. Let me make that clear. In the brains of females. And it's it's microchimera, like it's micro, right? So they can't really do a full DNA test on it to figure out whose DNA it is. They know that it's male. So all of these studies were about trying to figure out where this came from, because it's also not every single female. Because if it was every single female, then that would be a different study, right? It's some females had these little floaters of male DNA in their brains at autopsy. And so it was really interesting that we know for sure that microchimerism can happen when somebody gets like a blood transfusion or has a transplant. So if they're female and they get a transfusion from a male person or get a organ from a male person in their transplant, they can have these, and I'm just going to call them floaters because that's how I'm like conceptualizing it, of male DNA in their body. So as they've gone through this study, they found out that it has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier to go into the brain, but more often than not, it's in the body. So these floaters of male DNA. Hi, Rael. Thanks for being in here. He says Psychology Today has a great article on microchimerism called The You in Me. I'm going to have to look at that. Peace, Doc Thompson. Thank you. I am master's level, so just want to show respect to all the PhDs, but I appreciate that. So I'm gonna have to check out that. If I haven't already, I can't even remember what all I printed out, honestly, because like I say, it's this stack. But I'm pretty sure everything I printed out were actually like qualitative studies. I'm going to look through here real quick. So I went through immunology. I went through women's gynecology. I went through stem cell research. Yeah, that one was interesting. Obstetrics, medicine, reproductive health, even Science Daily. So I don't see the Psychology Today one, but sometimes Psychology Today is good at like summarizing research. You just kind of have to look at who that author is, but it's really great at giving a pretty good snapshot of what things are. So the study, this one was one that I found super interesting in 2012. Okay, now these microchimerism, the studies that I found go back, the ones that I pulled anyway, go back to 2005. So 2012 was not the first. Okay. So what they did was they found Y, and I have my notes again, keep me on track. They found Y chromosome DNA sequences in several brain regions in autopsy slides from 37 out of 59 women. So, like I said, it's not all, but it's a lot. So, what they were saying is that it's DNA liberated. I like that word. Essentially, it comes from fetal cells. So, like, if somebody was pregnant with a male child, that those fetal cells would be left in the body, which is kind of neat to think about if you've ever had a son. If you're female and you've ever given birth to a son, to think that their DNA becomes part of you, which in that way means that, you know, your husband or their father essentially also becomes part of you, because, you know, that baby boy's DNA is a mix of yours and his dad's. And so it's kind of neat to think about that, you know, you do become one at that point, right? Because you're retaining parts of, you know, the man that you had a baby boy with and your little boy. So that's kind of neat to think about. Now, are they positive that that's the only reason that causes this microchimerism? No. So some of the women didn't have children. And so then they kind of thought about, well, they might have had a miscarriage, or if they had had an abortion and that those fetal cells were still in there. Sometimes people are not very far along at all and have a miscarriage and don't even know it. But I didn't really look into at what point is that there's a point in time where there's like a flood of hormones, and the fetus will sort of start to become male or be female. So I didn't really look at the cutoffs for that. So it could also be like a person could be pregnant with twins and lose one of the twins pretty early on, and, you know, they didn't know about it. They actually called it feto-maternal trafficking. Interesting. So in that study is where they were able to determine that the microchimera could cross the blood-brain barrier, which led to later research when I was looking in immunology, where they were trying to find if there's a connection between male microchimera and autoimmune disorders. I didn't go far into that because that wasn't necessarily the direction that I was wanting to go. You know, my lane is over here with, you know, relationships and stuff. So I was trying to stay there. Rupture of the placenta or maybe abortion. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because there is DNA in the placenta, right? Also not an MD. So, but I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I heard that there's DNA in the placenta. So could be, could be. Hi, Mr. Shug to you. Thanks for being in here. Who says, just my opinion when it comes to women having mm, with multiple men, they're engaging in collecting souls and essentially owning a piece of that man forever. Mr. Shug to you, I one of these days I'm going to talk metaphysics with people. I don't necessarily disagree with you. Um, I think, well, I'm going to talk about when they start to postulate that possibly it's coming from semen. So I will get into that part. Okay. Hi, Lawrence Ross. You found me. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Okay. So this is what they were thinking of, right? That it was, babies that had somehow died if the person didn't know about, thank you, Mr. Shug, to you saying children, because I was thinking, intercourse. I know whispering it doesn't help with YouTube. Yes, children. Thank you. So anyway, they were trying to postulate, how that material could be there because they already had the theory that it was fetal, right? So, and then they, were able to demonstrate that at times it could cross the blood-brain barrier. So then people in immunology wanted to say, does that have something to do with autoimmune disorders? I left that one alone. So another paper talked about, for them, the most likely source of male microchimerism in the female brain was from pregnancy with a male fetus. They wanted to confirm it could be abortion or miscarriage. When they did their study, the pregnancy history was unknown. You would kind of think they would want to know. In addition to prior pregnancies, the male microchimera could be acquired by a female from a banished male twin, right? They also said an older sibling or through non-irradiated blood transfusion. So the older sibling thing then became interesting to me because, like I was talking about in the beginning, if you've already had a son, then you have his microchimera in you, so that if you then get pregnant and you have a daughter, it might then be possible that she could be born, because again, this is something that can cross a blood-brain barrier and you can get it through blood transfusion. So having a baby, they're literally having a transfusion through the placenta, kind of. They could be born with their older brother's microchimera. But again, it's not all the time. So it's that they would need to look into how many of these women who didn't have the male microchimera, if they had an older brother. Like you would have to do that to kind of prove that piece. So then an article came out. So in the article, they were saying the most likely answer was that all male DNA found living in the female brain came from a male pregnancy. They're saying that that was a safe, politically correct type of assumption. But in this article, they thought the researchers were kind of living in denial because they were autopsying women, or they thought they were autopsying women who had never been pregnant. Okay, so Leon says, yes, there's DNA in the placenta, but mostly in the umbilical cord. Thank you. I thought I had heard that before. Thank you for looking that up and seeing. Rael says, Vicky Thorne has a great breakdown of the effects of having multiple sex partners on women. Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah. I'm going to have to look at that. Okay. So in women who had never been pregnant, at least to their own knowledge, right? Or had never had a male child, they still found male DNA cells in the female brain. So what does that mean? So in this article, they were saying that since the researchers didn't know what the hell was going on, they kind of hid that. And this is according to this article, until they could explain it later. But according to these people, if you sit through the study, you can kind of find a statement that says, I wrote it down, in an odd chronological twist. Oh, no, that was a different one. Anyway, there was speculation in this article, though, that it does come from semen. That, again, because this microchimera can cross barriers, doesn't always, they're not able to track it, right? Because it can cross barriers, then wouldn't it stand to reason that since semen has DNA in the spermatozoa, and if it is absorbed, if a woman absorbs that data, then it's possible that the DNA could cross other barriers. So, I mean, so far they have not proved that that's not true. Okay. So, another possibility that's not been investigated. Yeah. Right. Just they want it investigated through a woman's circulation system after sexual intercourse to see if there's male DNA in her circulation system, because then it would show that a woman can absorb that DNA, and then it becomes these floaters of DNA in her body. So when they look at plausible, to the researchers, plausible theories, things they've actually researched is non-recognized male miscarriage, a vanished male twin. It's that, interestingly enough, is thought to be a pretty common phenomena, but the reason that they say thought and phenomena is because nobody can prove it. I think sometimes they just sort of go, well, it would make the most sense if this was the case, and then just go with it because it makes sense in their mind, which is unfortunate in research. Okay. Rael says sperm can change the DNA of a woman. It is a very powerful force. This is why historically strict rules have been applied to women's sexuality, because of the generational damage that can occur. I get that. Especially if you look at, how one of the studies said that, you could, when you give birth to your daughter, she could be born with her brother's microchimera. And so then it's less of a joining thing and more of a, how much microchimera do we have floating around in us, and what is it doing? I mean, immunology is looking into it. What does it do? And especially since it's something that can cross the blood-brain barrier, what is that going to do? It's important. Third possibility is the older male sibling transferred to the maternal circulation to the fetus of a later pregnancy. So a later paper that was published and was saying potentially those mechanisms may contribute, but they were kind of doubling down on that intercourse. It's still speculative. Nobody's proven it, which is kind of an interesting take on a research article, to write an entire research article to say people still don't know, instead of like trying to research it. But it's interesting. So they studied 154 girls, 21 tested positive for male microchimerism. So 21 out of 154. There was a tendency that the girls were more likely to test positive for male microchimerism if their mothers had previously received a transfusion, had given birth to a son, or had had a miscarriage. So that was kind of interesting. And then the oldest girls were more likely to test positive for male microchimerism than the younger girls. Okay. So again, now it still has to stay speculative because it's possible that the older girls may have had sex. Um, Less than half of microchimerism positivity was attributable to these factors. So they don't know. That's what they're saying. They don't know, but they can't say that it's not. Again, and if you can't say that it's not, then that you can look at it two ways. Like you can look at it as that you are carrying your husband and your children's like DNA with you, inside your body, which is it's a very cool and very sweet thing to think of, just the connectivity of a family. But if you think about other things, like kind of harkening back to home math that I did, if this male microchimera is absorbed by spermatozoa, then what is that actually doing to your body? To me, an interesting way to go with that would be if you have different male microchimera in you, then at some point, does it attack each other? Does your, like in immunology, does your body attack, right? Because they're not matching. Hopefully I'm making sense, right? Like they wouldn't recognize each other. But again, I didn't go into the immunology, and maybe I should have, but I like to go down rabbit holes, but I can only go down one at a time. Adrian says, "Oh, math, bitches." Okay. So, a September 2021 study was done. It essentially reaffirmed the existence of male microchimerism in women who had never been pregnant. Okay. So while the authors acknowledged the hypothesis that intercourse could be a source, they said their study was unable to address that question and proposed an alternative hypothesis. So again, we can't say whether it's that. What they said was, our study indicates that the origin of the microchimeric cells may not necessarily be a close family member. Interesting. One source is repeated sequential fetal maternal exchanges across generations. Now that's pretty interesting. Generational, right? Like that'd be cool if like you somehow have your grandpa's DNA. Like that might be kind of neat. Possible further sources are unreported or unrecognized interrupted pregnancies, breastfeeding. Interesting. Placental structures, pregnancy complications, including preeclampsia, and it's also been suggested that sexual intercourse may play a role. They didn't have the data available for a sufficient number of participants for a comprehensive analysis of that alternative. Lawrence Ross says, does this apply to women with multiple abortions? Well, I mean, I would think so. So if we went with that you're retaining your son's DNA, then if any of those fetuses were boys, then yeah, I mean, if that's at least one of the explanations, right? And that's their go-to. That's the one they want to go with. So, I would think that you would retain that DNA of any boys that you were ever pregnant with. So they were never able to demonstrate that 100% of women's male sexual partners have male cells that become part of the body. They weren't ever able to demonstrate one way or the other. The studies cobbled together kind of showed that even if sexual intercourse transferred cells from a male that later became incorporated into the female partner's body, it wouldn't happen in all cases. Again, because it's not every one. So it's an interesting thing that they're studying, right? Because it would totally be interesting to see what plays the part, right? Like, what if it's all of those things, right? And what is the thing that plays the part? Because, I get really kind of touchy-feely and sweet, and I'm like, what if love is present, right? And then we're incorporating everything, that's very less scientific, but it's a sweet thought, right? So that is that study. If you guys want a list of all these studies, just put it in the comments. I can type up a list and put it in the description. So you guys can look at those, or if you want to look at this one. It's pretty interesting. So in that way, we talked about attachment at the beginning, right? And that has more to do with like changing for each other, healing together. Let me take that off of there. There. Growing together, healing together, having good attachment, growing as a couple can kind of change who you are, in a good way, right? Because you're growing. But as far as microchimera, then because this is male DNA in a woman's body, and it does have something to do with being pregnant, intercourse, some of those things, then, it's possible to think about, like, as a woman, you could have part of your husband's DNA, and that you get to retain some of your son's DNA, which is, that's a sweet thought. I like that. Okay. So we're getting really close to an hour. I appreciate everybody being in here. Just as an aside, but something I want to leave you guys with. So something that comes from the Stoic principle of focusing only on what you can control is something called the let them theory. And in the let them theory is whatever somebody wants to do, you let them, especially if you can't control it. Okay. I hope everybody has a good holiday weekend. I hope everybody has fun in doing whatever they want to do. And hopefully people have extra time off. If you don't, I'm sorry, and I'm thinking about you, and that's, unfair. This coming Wednesday, we are going to start shadow work level 2. Which I'm super excited about because there will be other philosophers. So this is not just Jungian, and it's not just this little Amazon workbook. There will be other philosophers brought into it, metaphysics, psychology, theorists. We're going to go deep and I'm excited about it. Hopefully you guys can join me. We'll also have a live next Sunday. I have not landed on a topic yet. But if you guys have any ideas, put it in the comments. I have a couple things brewing. There is something I'm going to be doing a pre-recorded premiere for that I'm reviewing something. So that'll be coming out as well. It's possible that I may do the premiere for next Sunday. I haven't quite decided, but you guys let me know in the comments what you want, once this goes up, what you'd like me to do. I appreciate it. All right. Bye, guys.